shifting gears into the main topic, right? This topic is something we were originally going to talk about yesterday. I think it's a very interesting topic. What does it really take to build an 8-figure business? Okay. And this is something that we can maybe it's a good idea to kind of give the audience a little bit of an idea, right? So,
yeah,
both of our companies were 7-figure companies prior to coming together. We merge. Our companies are multi 7-figure companies, but we're not I guess combined company, right?
yeah.
But we're not an 8-figure company yet. But we're on the road, right? We're on the trajectory of kind of getting to that point. I estimate we could do it next year, but I don't know
I
what
think
your
so
thoughts
too.
are.
I think we're close. I think we're very close.
I feel like, and for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, right? Like 7-figure company, $1 million in revenue, 8-figure company, $10 million revenue. Different game at that point, right? When you first hear that and you think about our own journey as a company about growing to 8 figures in revenue, what does it take, right? We're not talking about making 6 figures. We're not talking about making 7 figures. What do you think it takes, and what has kind of led for us to be on the trajectory to be able to grow into an 8-figure company? Because I mean, that's substantial, right? Like that does not happen by accident. I don't think 7 figures happens by accident either. 6 figures could, like you could be a lucky bastard, trip into some deals, I don't know, or you have like a great referral partner, right, or whatever, right? But we're talking about something real at that point. What is your thought process on like what does it actually take? Your first initial thoughts to get there.
And I was thinking about this topic this morning a little bit, and honestly, my first thought is it takes a lot of capital. And like if we were to really like open up our accounting books for you guys and like we were to really tear through like what's going on internally at our companies or our combined mini insurance conglomerate that we have, it takes an enormous amount of cash to continue to grow at the level that we're talking about. When and every time you get to a level, and I guess it's kind of an interesting thing for me because as I think we have the hindsight now because we've grown to the size that we have. When you're just starting off, you think, man, if I could get to 6 figures, it would be crazy. This is what I really want. You get to, 2, 3, 400,000. And then you're thinking, man, if I could just break $1 million, this would be crazy. You get to $1 million, you get to a few million. And so it's like, as you continue to go level up essentially with each of that extra digit, what you realize is it takes a lot of investment. It takes a lot of capital to continue to make these jumps. And I can tell you again firsthand as someone who's continued to pour money in. We're talking earlier in this episode about investing in the business before investing in these personal investments or investing in the stock market. And I've always been of that belief as well. I've always kind of poured all the extra money that I had right back into the business to try to continue to grow it. Because again, I can control, I have a lot of controllables over this investment. If I'm spending money on the business versus just throwing money into something like real estate or something that might be out of my control, right? The stock market is a lot of times out of my control. I can't control what, Apple is going to release on earnings next week, something like that. It's just completely out of my control. So
yeah.
But that was like the number one thing off the top of my head is that the amount of cash that it takes to reinvest into the business, to allow it to scale, to build infrastructure, to allow you to continue to scale up to the next level and the next level, and the next level. I think most people have no idea. I think they have no idea the amount of cash. I think a lot of people think you just kind of like naturally get there almost. Like you hit 1 million and then you just keep going and you keep going. And then all of a sudden you're at 10 million a year and like
hustle, bro. Hustle.
Yeah,
hustle,
yeah.
hustle. No, that's garbage.
Yeah.
I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, let's dissect this a little bit, right? We don't have to talk about specific numbers. We don't have to pull out our books for the audience or anything, but like,
I'm going to screen share my QuickBooks. Hang on.
Let's talk about some things that we spend a lot of money on as a company, right?
Yeah.
I estimate we'll probably spend $1 million this year on paid ads.
Depends on AEP, but yeah, I think we're already over 6 figures this year.
Yeah.
I think I think we'll be somewhere in the high 6 figures to 7 figures on just paid ads this year for sure.
Yeah. And like, so think about that. Why are we doing that? Because we need leads. We need lead flow. We need advertising for all sides of our business.
Yes.
Payroll. You know, Glenn shared at an event that we spoke at that we co-hosted earlier this year that our payroll was for the company in 2024, our first year of being merged, about 250, 300 employees, depending on the time of the year, was over 2 million. I had somebody come up to me at that event afterward and ask me, he's like, you were including your own payments in that, weren't you? And I was like, we're including our W-2 payments, but not our distributions.
Correct.
Right? Like,
And that our W-2 is nothing in the scheme of that amount, that number.
Our W-2 payments for ourselves is probably like $60K a year
Yeah.
each. And so the vast majority of what we personally earn is distributions. So it doesn't even include that. You know, that's commissions paid out to agents. That's, you know,
that's funny. They're like, you just paid yourself a bunch of money and then called it payroll.
Yeah,
Said you're paying all these. Yeah, that's funny.
And so I'm like, I guess part of it, but not really. You know, like
not really.
And so, you know, that's a huge expense for us. We have massive like systems costs, right? Between our dialer with Lead Heroes,
software costs,
CRM costs, outsourcing costs for various things. You know, there's a huge cost with that. Phone systems, like I said, CRMs, usage for sending out mass emails and things like that. 7-figure CRM, you know, support team for 7-figure CRM. You know, it just goes on and on and on in terms of all these expenses. How about insurance? You know, we have a lot of insurance on the business,
Tons
right?
Of insurance.
We just had to spend like $800 for insurance for the summit because the venue required it for the party. You know what I mean? Like,
don't go too hard, you guys.
Yeah, please.
Don't party too hard.
Errors and emissions insurance, right? Agency E&O, because we need it, because we're a real agency, right? We have LOAs, everything like that.
Cybersecurity insurance. Hire Heroes. We have a 7-figure policy with it's a cybersecurity insurance policy that we had to have for a corporate client. Otherwise, they wouldn't do business with us.
Yeah, I think about all the money we spend at this point, and it's substantial. And I know there's going to be someone watching this that will ask themselves, can you grow to 8 figures without spending substantial money? I'd love to hear your answer. My initial answer, though, is no, you can't.
So I would say you could, but you're going to be on such a slow trajectory. It's imagine that
years.
I mean, so like, let's take I'll give you an example. So there was a MedSup agent that I used to work with, really great producer, was essentially doing everything himself. He had like, you know, he had like an admin, and he had like one LOA, you know, built up to some crazy number, like 6,000 or 7,000 clients with like almost like no staff. So I think you could very slowly, but the problem is, you know, you're going to deal with stuff like retention issues. You know, you'll have different things, but I think you could very, very slow. But you're talking about going on a trajectory of like, you know, 20, 30 years would be my guess. Versus if you did spend the money, you could probably get there way faster.
But even at that point, right? Like that guy that you talked about, like 6,000 to 8,000 clients, that's not 8-figure company.
No. But I'm just saying, like, to see, because he did that in like a 10-year span.
Okay.
Something, or 15 years, like 10 or 15 years, you know, with, you know, there was like a couple LOA agents that kind of came and went, and then him mainly producing, and like one admin. So very small staff, wasn't really spending money, you know, 10, 15 years. Like I feel like was on a trajectory that eventually could have gotten there without really spending the money. But you're trading, the point is you're trading time for money at some point, right? And if you really want to try to get to $10 million without spending money, it's going to take you forever to get there, if you get there at all.
Yeah. Let me frame the question a little bit differently. Have you ever seen anyone build an 8-figure company without spending significant money? I never have.
No.
So like, you know, and is there an example out there that you might be able to point to, somebody listening? Maybe, but you know, it's some very unique situation.
Yes.
Extremely like unicorn like situation. It's the exception, not the rule. So, you know, I talk to agents all the time that have an extremely hard time wrapping their head around spending money, you know, even small amounts of money, on themselves, on their business, on whatever.
Yes.
You know, I talked to an agent recently, you know, we have 7-figure university, like we talked about at the beginning of the show, that's 86% off or something like that. $700 one time is usually $5,000. It is the best training course you can get as a Medicare agent that exists. It's better than any course you can buy that's $10,000, $15,000 a year, but it's lifetime.